Hi, everybody. It's Leanne Pepper, and welcome back to another episode of Class Reunion. This will be a single episode titled After the Fact. It's been a long time since I've had another episode uploaded, and I feel like the old Catholic girl in me is wanting to go to confession and explain why I haven't had an episode up in a while. So bear with me. You know, my episodes are raw, uncensored, and unfiltered. So I hope that at the end of this, there's some understanding, compassion, and support. Again, that is optional. So you're feel free to feel what you feel after this episode. But I felt that it was warranted, and here we go. I wanted to do a recap following the 40th class reunion, and I did so from a perspective of being an attendee. That episode was with Mark Kay, and we went over the impact of the 40th class reunion. But there were some highs and lows that occurred during that time that many of you were unaware of. Some were, but most of you were not. And so I just wanted to talk about it from my perspective on somebody that was putting together the class reunion. There were a lot of highs associated with it. It was something I was definitely looking forward to. I was pushing towards August. August was a year time frame for the podcast, and it was also a year's worth of working on it and reconnecting with everybody. And there was a huge sense of accomplishment that we had finally achieved that milestone, that we had great attendance, positive feedback, and it was a very big high to have pulled it off and had such support from all of you. And it made me have a passion for reconnections and storytelling. It's what I had been doing with the podcast up until that point, and it reaffirmed that I may have been onto something because so many of you had expressed coming solely by listening to the podcast. Some of you said it was a support tool that just made you feel that you could come to the reunion after listening to the podcast. And I just felt like whether I meant to do that or not, because you've all heard me say I didn't intentionally name it Class Reunion, it ended up being such a marriage to the event that I was pleased on both sides. And I even saw the value in wanting to extend the same type of format to the class of 85 because they are scheduled to have their 40th this year. And it is fun to explore. Like I was just thinking, the top 4 people or 5 people that you'd want to hear from. I thought it would be a fun way to get them excited also to go to the reunion. It's part of my long-term business plan. I felt that it's an offering that I'd like to, share with those that are looking for a reconnection in preparation of the reunion because I see it as a really cool marriage to the event. I think listening to a few folks ahead of time will increase attendance and encourage people to want to dust off those memories and rekindle some friendships on a new level. I mean, you might not have connected with everybody in high school, but I do know a lot of people reconnected as new individuals in our 50s. I loved seeing the request for, a golf group, a golf club. That was very cool that people were doing that outreach right after the reunion. So I was anticipating my follow-up meeting with the CEO of classmates.com. Sorry, I'm super nervous. Okay. I was going to meet with the CEO of classmates.com because I did have, like I mentioned, a full business plan to execute. And I've talked about how hard it is to do a podcast and probably have not done it justice because I've had a lot of people reach out to me separately. Why have you not done this or done that? And there's a lot to that, which I will definitely address. But one of the things I was really looking forward to was discussing my roadmap with the CEO of classmates.com. And there was going to be about 5 people in attendance. And I had submitted my agenda, which was pretty extensive throughout the whole process. And there was nothing that they wanted to take off the table. There was one item that they didn't feel they could accomplish or that was in this year's roadmap, which was the website. So we had the website from myevent.com. And while it was free and I've advertised about it, it was a complex tool that I can see that there should be some things simplified towards it. But that was one item they didn't feel that they could probably pull off for next year. And I had in, East Fashion sent them a box of candy on the website where I get the Decades box of candy. There's a lot of toys too. And I sent all of that to this operations manager who was integral in setting up the meeting, and the CEO. And I came home, never heard from him. I was supposed to have a meeting, never heard from him. I sent an email saying if there was a disconnect, if they could share with me what that was for the future so I could better prepare for what may have, turned them off to continuing the meeting. Never heard from them. So I think at that point I started to unravel because I went to the reunion completely broke. Completely broke. I had to have people, Melissa, for one, drove me everywhere. She was unaware of my situation, but partly she knew, and she was kind enough to drive me everywhere. Nancy Royal picked up the hotel for me at the Troy Somerset Inn. And so, it was a stitching of myself together because the threads were unraveling so quickly that when I stood up and addressed all of you and welcomed you, my soul had already left the building. And that's the truth. I was really looking forward to it. I knew the importance of what we had been able to accomplish, but me personally, standing in front of you, I felt like a huge fraud because I couldn't control the outcome of what was next to happen in my life. So when I came home and that meeting was canceled, I still was looking for employment. Now, mind you, if I can just refresh your memory, I have shared how therapeutic this reunion has been, class reunion podcast has been. And I discovered so much about myself, so much personal healing that had to be done. Many of you supported that healing because you too had been in similar situations. It just opened up dialogue that a lot of us maybe had been holding on from when we grew up. And I started to feel this weight off my shoulders. I felt healthier. I started to lose weight. My mental awareness of where I wanted to take my life was at an all-time high. And I just continued to get hit with one thing after another. I've been on, I don't know how many Zoom interviews where people don't even bother to give you eye contact. I've been rejected the minute I hit send on applications. I've taken Zoom courses on the application tracking system. I have reached out to my network. Most of them have lost their job as well. I've contacted recruiters that I've dealt with in the past who have ghosted me. I have walked up to the corner of the street to become a waitress who didn't need any help because here in Florida, it's summer hours and they're lucky to keep those people employed that they have. I've applied for every part-time position, full-time position. I have exhausted my software sales network. And then everyone has said, why don't you apply and do something? This is your chance to reinvent yourself, which, yes, I know it's called a podcast. I did. But after I applied to things even outside of software sales, then you don't have that experience. I could go on and on and on. And time ran out. So this has been slowly happening behind the scenes, but I've never had an issue. I've never had an issue getting a job. In fact, when I've left to go to other companies, it's because I was recommended or somebody asked me to join them at another organization. And I really thought that when my dad passed away in 2020, and I just went through all of the emotions that you do in uncovering your past and putting those hurts to bed, that this new found individual that I had discovered was going to turn out okay because I had done a lot of the work. And I've talked to my son about this on a number of occasions, and he said, I know that you sound strong and I know that you feel great, but you've been played and you've been played by yourself. And it's actually true. He didn't mean it in a bad way, but life is funny that way. When you think you've reached the pinnacle of something positive, it's not always the right direction or what God has in store for you. So I only say that because I'm going to hear from a lot of people on did you do this or have you come? I mean, it's amazing. And I have been slowly letting people know how hard it is to find employment for a while, but it escalated and I had to sell my car midway through the year. So I've been without a vehicle, which has also made it difficult from a networking perspective. But I thought I could get something working from home, and that had not happened. So I really unraveled in a fast pace after the reunion. And it was almost like undoing all the hard work that I had done. I felt very much back to the beginning, if not more so in depression. So there are a lot of highs and lows that come with financial difficulties. And I've reached out to my son. I've reached out to friends, which I'll get into in a minute. But Joe has been nothing but supportive. But he can't do it himself. He shouldn't be in the position to fully take care of his mom. Although he'd love to, but there just comes a point where you have to fold, right? And I've been refusing to do so because saying I'm out of the game and putting my cards down means I really have nowhere to go. So if I was to go move in with him and his girlfriend, first of all, that's a tremendous ask, and it doesn't solve the problem. If you're poor, you're poor. You're just poor in another location. And I still would be without a vehicle, and I would be, it's just a lot to ask. Hang on. And then we had good old Helene and Milton, and I don't mean aunt and uncle, I mean 2 hurricanes, and they just destroyed our area. And Milton has really wreaked havoc. There's no gas, there's no power. My son's girlfriend Caitlin isn't working because their food store locations have been out, and the kitchen and where they make the prepaid foods called Fit Life Foods in Plant City is destroyed. And there's just so much aftermath that I think people are unaware of. So, good golly, if you're listening this far, God bless you. Okay, here we go. So yes, he's family, he's my family, but it's hard to put that all on him. And he's aware. I think the reason why he's tried to help me so much while I'm in Naples is he's aware of how hard I have tried and how many people have promised positions and then withdrawn it or have ghosted me. I mean, good golly, guys, the lack of respect you get at this age when you're looking for employment is unreal. And I've answered more questions on job descriptions about my sexuality than anything about my background. I mean, you now just upload your resume, but then after that, you have 10 questions of how you identify and what your sexual orientation is. So many people say, well, isn't that illegal? Sure it is. But you know how many large corporations I have had an interview with and submitted an application and had so many subcategories that I didn't even know about? I mean, your pronouns, that's so passe. They don't even care about that. They want to know like how confused you are about your sexuality. So, I can recall it's pansexual, asexual, heterosexual. Those are basic. But then there were about 3 or 4 other ones that I didn't know. And then there were some that said, I'm still exploring. I don't know. I refuse to answer. I was like looking for stale. There was no option for stale. But I did have fun with it on occasion, and I would mix up my responses, just hoping that it would entice them to give me an interview. It's been it's been fun. So anyway, I started to really withdraw, and I didn't talk to a lot of people about what was going on. I was staying home a lot. Well, I had nowhere to go without my car. But, I was eating cream cheese and bread. And sometimes I felt really fancy if I put some dill on it, like dried dill. And it made me feel like I was, having something fancy. So I would mix up whether I put jam on the sour cream or dill. So dill was evening. And then if I put some type of jam on the top, that was breakfast. I know your jaw is open, but that's the life I've been living. And I have had some people rise up to the top, but many, and when I say many, I mean many, rejected me over time. And it's a true reflection of when you start to withdraw because you're not feeling your best, people do abandon you through isolation. And I've been blocked on social media. I've been blocked on my phone. And while that sounds really sad, it's a gift. It's a gift for me to know these people never mattered in the first place. But it doesn't mean you don't feel bad about it when it's happening. And it makes you sit back and question, right? Everything's been a big question for me. I was talking to Joe, and I think I was mentioning this to my friend Pat too, that while I've discovered my missteps in corporate, how I let them run all over me, I've embraced some of the past hurt with situations that I grew up with, only to rely, on my family and grow with them. And you just feel like you're going through all of these areas of self-exploration, and you don't think about your friends. You just assume that they're going to be there as they stood. And when they don't, I just felt like, boy, this isn't peeling the layers of an onion. This is boiling me down to my bones. I feel like a skeleton. But there is some good in that, which I will talk about. But I'm like the lobster in the pan. You do hear little screams every once in a while when you're boiling. But who doesn't love a good lobster, right? Okay, that's my humor. But it's just an overwhelming feeling of always being on the brink of loss. Personally, professionally, it is what it is. And a call for help in any form is opening yourself to feeling incredibly weak. And, while I'm talking about this from a financial burden, all of us feel that way, whether you have an abusive marriage or you have an issue with your children or, all sorts of things. There's a problem at work. Whatever it is that's troubling you in any form where you feel like you need to seek help. If you have an addiction, all sorts of things. It is in our country such a sign of weakness, and or it's how come you never told me? So there's a lot of blaming the victim, which I've discovered. And it's also helped me understand if I've ever done it. It's helped me reflect on what type of friend I have been. So this isn't all a woe is me about where people have done me wrong. It's, how much have I supported others? And I got to tell you, if I ever come out of this alive, my empathy is going to be totally different. I'm an empath by nature, which makes you feel like you're empathetic, but it's not. It just means you're trying to read a room really quickly and assessing people and putting all the pressure on the outward feelings of making them all comfortable without making yourself comfortable. But to have empathy is totally different. And so I've questioned how many times have I been empathetic, because without it and seeing it happen in real time, fall to the wayside of people you trusted, it's a kick in the ass to relearn your value. And I say that because up until August, I was thinking I had value. up until August, I was thinking I was in the best direction I had been in a very long time. And I feel like there was devil's work behind it all, where what I thought was happening wasn't. And so, there we go. I've had a new opportunity handed to me. It's for Heartland payroll and HR, but it's a commission only position. And it's a lot of networking. And it's a lot of networking. In fact, one of the things that I really liked about it is you really can work anywhere. It's to help any retail, automotive, restaurant, small business, anybody that wants to reduce some payroll and HR costs. So it's anybody that you have a contact with. And I thought this will be a piece of cake because I have friends that have been in this business and I have friends that know people, because aside from, the payroll and HR to a company, an entrepreneur, it's also for insurance agents because we allow a company to choose their insurance carrier. It's for banks, to support and work with who want to provide small business loans, and we can partner with them to provide payroll. It's for CPAs who want to offload payroll. And yes, I'm getting into the business mode, but the possibilities are so large. And I was so into the enterprise sales structure. And here's the 3 banks you're going to call on, and you have to put all your eggs in one basket, that I was so pumped up for this opportunity because it's endless. It's all networking. And even through that, I've had people not follow through on agreeing to help for whatever reason. I'm not even going to analyze it, but a lot of support there has not come through. And I get a lot of, well, let me think on it. And so here I sit. Now, the weird thing is, it's the first time I've been in a group of people from a sales perspective that I have felt welcomed, valued, listened to, supported. My boss is super young. The team is all over the map in ages, and we've been through a lot since I started. I think right after I joined, Helene came through, and then Milton came through, and we've had people lose their home basically twice. And it's been like this group that survives by faith, which of course I've asked myself how I feel about faith for a really long time. And it's interesting that there's been this little hub of hope in the people that I work with, but they're devastated and they're suffering, and businesses aren't going to be open. And so I question how I can survive down here when people are out of work. And that leads me to the juxtaposition that I'm in. When I came home in August, my lease was up, and the people that I'm renting from have been very kind up until this point to work with me on this new opportunity. But then we've been hit by Mother Nature. And when you're a commission-based opportunity, it's hard for them to want to renew with me and rely on my income every month, knowing that I've had these 2 setbacks from Mother Nature. And that's what I'm saying. It's so funny how you think you're in a right spot and you talk about your work to people and they're like, gosh, this is going to be great. This is so up your alley. And then you've missed just about every networking meeting you could possibly imagine. Things are canceled right and left. And you fall further behind the 8 ball with food in your home and opportunity to pay the bills. And I do have friends that have bubbled up, definitely, and have helped me out tremendously. But how far do you do that? And so it's interesting to where I've pushed off this lease renewal, and so have they. They've been questioning whether I should renew or not. And they just recently felt comfortable in sending me the lease agreement. And I can't do it. Milton came. And I just see myself being on the edge of feeling behind again. I have no money. That how many times can I turn to my son? And how many times can I turn to friends that have already helped me up to this point? And so I'm asking all of you to see if there's anything out there that you feel you can guide me with. I'm open to all the possibilities. I'll start with the podcast. One of the things that people have said to me is, how could we have supported you? And there is a process to how you get sponsorship, and it does come with time, and it does come with over 50 episodes, and it does come with the amount of downloads and subscribers you have. And I've said all of that many times. I close out my podcast that way, but it's not in the millions, and it's not that it's bad. I've appreciated all of your support, but it took me 50 some to get to that point, and it still is in its infancy for a lot of sponsors. It doesn't mean it's not available. It's just that to pay for a month of podcast production, it's just not there. I'm not New Heights, new news. This is old news. So I haven't felt discouraged, because what's really cool is behind the scenes. What you don't know is, for the very first time, I was starting to get people in my inbox. I've gotten people asking to be on the podcast. And even from a business standpoint, I've had customers that I've been trying to call and speak with. And my twist to it all is to say, hey, I'd love to know your story of being an entrepreneur in the Naples area. And this is a woman who's a CEO of a soap company who actually, if you look on our records, says do not call. And she's been very excited and open to the possibility of being on the podcast to talk about how she started her own soap company and opened several locations and is now taking it national. There's so many cool topics that people have reached out to me about. And so I have felt very comfortable. It's just that I can't finance it on my own. And I've had classmates say, why don't you pay for subscription? Yes, Patreon is an option. I just don't, honestly, I haven't thought of that. That's been something I still don't think would be the value of my podcaster's time for a month's worth of episodes, but I don't know. I haven't done it. I did think about letting you all know that there's availability for sponsorship. So whether it was my event, or you've heard Old Time Candy, I did a commercial for even Jennifer Bergemeyer's, organization, her nonprofit, for the Haitian group. So I enjoy that type of placement, and perhaps that's something that we can consider out there. If anybody's interested in sponsoring a particular episode, I'd be more than happy to do that. And that's one way that I could keep this going until I get the mark of 100 episodes or so, to allow some of the bigger names to sponsor. So I have always felt like the podcast was not something I should turn away from. It's something I feel like I've had to hit pause on financially. But hey, you all let me know otherwise. I mean, maybe I need to just put a pin in it for now and rebrand it another time. But I feel like so many other schools could benefit from reuniting their classmates and having reconnections. There's just a huge amount of direction that I've explored taking this into. It's just the social media managers that you need to take it to that next level can run between $5,000 and $8,000. And I don't have $5 or $8. So podcast is one thing. The other is, because I can take Heartland wherever I need to go, that's part of it. But because it's a commission only, any kind of employment on top of that at this point would be welcome, whether it's working here in Naples or if I have to move. But a move would require somebody to welcome me into their home. I don't have work history to go by to lease anything. I've heard everyone say, come back to Michigan. Guys, the bucket is ringing so loudly with air that I can't do the normal come home and rent. I have no W-2 history. And I'm like Kevin Hart, my savings and my checking account aren't working together. So why am I sharing all of this? Well, to be vulnerable and honest and ask for needing support is because people are going to say, I didn't know, and so here we are kind of at the end of this chapter for me. And I don't want people to say, I didn't know. I'm not putting any burden on anybody. I'm just simply saying, this is my truth, because I don't want anything later to be like, my gosh, I had no idea. I'm giving you some clarity into the person that you saw at the reunion who knew this was coming and is scared to death at the end of this chapter and not knowing what's next. And I'm going to read you something that I just came about, ironically, the other day on social media. And I was like, gosh, this is so appropriate for what I'm going through right now, and for anybody, And once the storm is over, you won't remember how you made it through, how you managed to survive. You won't even be sure, in fact, whether the storm is really over. But one thing is certain. When you come out of the storm, you won't be the same person you walked in. That's what the storm is all about. So I just want to reinstate why I chose to call this After the Fact. Because after I reflect on everything that's happened, the highs and the lows after the reunion and what followed, I decided to call this After the Fact. So often when people are struggling silently, it's only after their situation becomes critical that others realize how much help was needed. You hear people say, I didn't know, or if only I had known sooner, I could have done something. This episode is my way of preventing those words from ever being said. I'm sharing my story now while I'm in the thick of it, because I don't want to be a silent case. I want to give people the opportunity to know what's happening in real time before it's too late to offer support, encouragement, or even just understanding. Sorry. This is me, like I always am, being open before anyone can say, I didn't know. Good golly. Is anybody still listening to this? Jeez. So I want to close with more of a message of hope, right? I've taken you on the roller coaster ride of my life. But in sharing all of this, my hope isn't to dwell on the negatives, but to reach out, right? And to seek connection, like I've tried to do within the podcast, and understanding from anyone who might be listening. Life has brought me to a place where everything feels uncertain, but I still believe that there's potential for something better. I believe that with the support of my community and all of you and the kindness of others, new doors can open and fresh opportunities can arise. I'm asking for help not because it's easy, but because sometimes that's what you need to do in order to move forward. Whether it's a kind word, a new connection, a shared opportunity, I'm open to any and all possibilities. If there's one thing I've learned from this podcast and this journey, is that we grow stronger together. So I invite all of you to walk with me, to be part of this story, and to help each other find light in what may feel like a dark time. Because even in these moments, I still have hope that things can change. And sometimes all it takes is for one person to step forward and say, I'm here. So I'm sharing with you this so it's not a story after the fact. I love you all very much. I appreciate your support and understanding. And thank you for joining this episode of Class Reunion.